science is how happy we are, on to inflation in the world of plants and fungi. Carbon inflation might cause a crash for trees. Then we left planet Earth and took a look at cosmic inflation. Next time you have an inflated sense of self, remember everything in the universe is running away from you. Still to come on the show, why Romania's vegan bears went extinct, and we find the answer to a question from one of you listeners.
The BBC World Service is made possible by American Public Media, with the largest expression audiences everywhere. The BBC World Service connects audiences to the world. From international news to arts and culture programming, listeners hear global stories and perspectives not heard anywhere else.
Wherever you spend your morning, NPR's Morning Edition is there with you. Wherever the story takes place, NPR's Morning Edition connects it with you.
Dallas,
Des Moines,
Topeka,
Montana,
Cleveland, San Francisco,
Denver,
Philadelphia,
Minneapolis,
Miami, Colorado,
Washington.
You will own your morning wherever you are when you choose to spend tomorrow with Morning Edition from NPR News.
This morning, 5 to 9 on News 88.9 KNPR.
Coming up after the news, the show that brings you the science behind the news. We take a look at the vegan Romanian bears that have gone extinct. Plus, we answer a question from one of you listeners. Why do spider webs look the way they do? And finally, vaping. Where did these candy-coloured devices come from? And what does the future of vaping look like? Or should I say, taste like? More unexpected elements coming up shortly.
BBC News with Danielle Yarowiecka. Donald Trump has been attacked by his rivals for the US Republican presidential nomination during the latest TV debate. Ron DeSantis abandoned his previous reticence to criticize Mr. Trump, who's the clear frontrunner. He said the former president was missing in action for failing to take part in the debate. Mr. Trump chose instead to travel to Michigan to address workers in the car industry. He warned that a shift towards electric vehicles would put people out of work. Just over a week after Azerbaijan seized control of Nagorno-Karabakh, more than half the ethnic Armenian population has fled. The authorities in Armenia say 65,000 people have arrived there. Azerbaijan has yet to allow international teams into Nagorno-Karabakh to monitor conditions there. Trading in the hugely indebted Chinese property firm Evergrande has again been suspended on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. Recent developments, including the scrapping of a debt restructuring plan, have left the shares virtually worthless. A Vietnamese court has sentenced an environmental activist to 3 years in prison for tax evasion. Human rights campaigners accuse the authorities of trying to silence criticism of their climate policies. Taiwan has unveiled its first locally built submarine as it tries to boost its defences against China. President Tsai Ing-wen said history would forever remember the day. Mexico has deployed troops to the border with Guatemala, where rival drug cartels are battling for control. Gangs blocked roads and cut electricity in remote towns at the weekend. Switzerland's glaciers have lost a further 4% of their volume this year. It's the second biggest loss ever, following last year's record melt of 6%. Scientists say the dramatic ice loss is a clear symptom of global warming and is likely to be irreversible. BBC News.
This is Unexpected Elements from the BBC World Service. I'm Caroline Steele, and I'm joined by Godfred Boafo in Ghana.
Hi.
Hi, Godfred. And Andrada Fiskutian in Romania.
Hi, Bună.
Between us, we're trawling the news for the science that lies behind it. So far in the show, we've been investigating the science of inflation, but we're leaving that behind now. Sometimes there's a news story out there that's big in one part of the world, but it goes under the radar of global news. Luckily, we're an international team, so we make sure you listeners don't miss out. And this week, Andrada has a story to share. But first, here's an audio clue. Andrada, I'm guessing you either want to talk about moose or bears?
Exactly, we'll go with bears this time.
Sounds good. So, do you have bears in Romania?
We do, and it's one of the largest bear populations in Europe.
Now, I find this worrying because recently, earlier this year actually, I drove from Bucharest to Constanța on the coast. Bears didn't even cross my mind. Should I have been worrying about them?
No, you don't have to worry. They're based in the forests, where there are 6,000 brown bears, or maybe more, and some of these bears are in Transylvania.
Okay, now I've got a very serious question for you here. Are there more bears or vampires in Transylvania?
That's a great question. My money is on bears.
Okay, I agree. I'm going to go bears too. I don't think the vampire populations are doing so well at the moment. Godfred, I'm thinking you probably don't have bears in Ghana?
Yeah, you're very right about that. I want a bear here. We don't have any. We haven't seen a bear in a million years.
Andrada, has Romania always had thousands and thousands of bears?
It had. Bears in Romania today are brown bears, but if you go back to the Carpathian Mountains, you might find fossils belonging to cave bears, which are now extinct, in a cave called Cave Bear. Gottfried should visit that one. There were more than 100 cave bear skeletons that were discovered in the 1980s.
And how are these cave bears different from brown bears, or are they just brown bears that like to stay at home?
So the cave bear was larger than the brown bear. Males typically weigh up to 600 kilos.
Pretty heavy. When was it that they died out?
They vanished some 24,000 years ago. Many factors contributed to this. Some say that hunting played a role, or that hibernation habits resulted in high mortality rates over winter. Others argue that cave bears disappeared because they couldn't adapt well to climate change.
Okay, and if I remember rightly, 24,000 years ago is about the peak of the last ice age, so that makes sense. It was pretty cold, even for a bear.
Yeah, it was. So according to Dr. Ioana Meleg, a paleogeneticist at Babeș-Bolyai University in Cluj-Napoca, Romania, who was interviewed by Horizon, cave bears got extinct because they were picky eaters.
Picky eaters? How picky are we talking?
Well, cave bears had a plant-based diet. Researchers know this because cave bears have broad teeth that are great at grinding plants. But as the climate became cooler, fewer plants became available. By contrast, the brown bear, which had an omnivorous diet, was able to survive, and it still roams the woods in Romania.
Okay, so that's interesting because I'm veggie to try and reduce my contribution to climate change, but a changing climate wiped out the veggie cave bear. That doesn't seem fair.
Yeah, it isn't. Evolution doesn't always favor species that do the right thing.
Can we learn anything from the cave bear going extinct? Like, which animals, like me, are more at risk when it comes to climate change in the future?
That would be the next step. Ioana Meleg and her team have conducted genetic sequencing on cave bear populations. They want to produce the most comprehensive genomic data set for these animals. The project is named Evolution, and Romanian researchers are still analyzing the findings, but some results could be announced later this year.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to hearing what we can learn from Romania's extinct vegan bears. But right now, Romania is full of brown bears, which are really cute, but also potentially dangerous, right? How do Romanians feel about having a big bear population?
Well, over the past year, I've read numerous reports of brown bears entering villages and cities in search of food. And every time it happened, locals received a notification on their phones. In response to this, the Minister for the Environment approved the culling of just over 200 bears, some of which, it's claimed, are for preventive measures.
Okay, you say it's claimed. That makes it sound like there's a bit of a debate?
Yeah, it is. 24 environmental NGOs opposed this idea. They argued that the role of the environmental minister should be to preserve biodiversity rather than permitting the killing of bears. There are fears that bears that are not problematic might be targeted, and NGOs believe that there are alternative solutions.
Okay, so Godfred, we've established there aren't any bears in Ghana, but are there any animals that people are scared of?
Well, not many, but the elephant is one that seems to have a dispute with locals in this area, that's in the savannah region of Ghana, particularly because it has the capacity